Allow me to kickstart day 2 of HICSA with our first panel discussion. Keeping in line with this year's theme, our first session, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, will be moderated by Mr. Anurag Bhatnagar, Chief Executive Officer, the Leela Palaces, Hotels and Resorts. Known as the man with a Mizaj touch, Mr. Bhatnagar took over the reins at Leela in January 2020. Since then, he has been dedicated to strengthening and elevating Leela's position as an epitome of true Indian luxury while scaling the brand's growth to new heights. Mr. Bhatnagar is one of the most facilitated and awarded hoteliers in India. Joining Mr. Bhatnagar on stage are Mr. Prabhat Verma, Executive Vice President Operations, International and Ancillary Businesses, South India, IHCL. Mr. Puneet Dhawan, Senior Vice President Operations, India and South Asia, Accor. Mr. Rohit Kapoor, Global Chief Marketing Officer, OYO. And Mr. Vipul Prakash, Chief Operating Officer, Make My Trip.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I can see that the energy levels are already very high, and I was thanking Manav for giving us this particular slot. We know how interesting this 9 a.m. slot can be. So I think Navjeet couldn't join us today because he had to attend to something which was happening in the family. But this is, thanks for being here today and for everyone. I know this question has been discussed very often and everybody's been talking about it. We heard a lot about the resilience in the business, the rebound and the explosive demand. And I believe the travel industry is poised for an explosive rebound. So this is a quick kind of a take from all of you, maybe for over a minute, in terms when do we see touching the 2019 levels or crossing the 2019 levels, if you can specify the quarter, the month, or the trends. So maybe starting with you, Prabhat.
Thank you so much, Anurag. Wonderful to have a physical meeting, and I don't think there's a question of a rebound. It's already happened. And we are seeing some fantastic numbers coming in from the quarter 3 of last year to the quarter that we are looking ahead. I guess it's a lot of revival stories all along, and I guess we are almost on the track of going beyond the 2019 numbers of previous year. I see a lot of optimism. We've seen leisure destinations which already did well, and to top it, you see the metro cities gearing up, example of Mumbai, Delhi, and almost getting to those high occupancies and great ADRs back again. Yes, fueled in by multiple factors, but I think that's what India's story is today. It is in a very, very envious position considering the environment that we are in. And we've done well as a company too, that we've got 100 destinations in India. We have 200 hotels, so not many centuries as the IPL story goes. We are in for good time. I'm in a happy position.
So Q3 this year, or you already in the rebound?
I guess the Q3 numbers and Q4 numbers will
so 2019 equivalent, both
and more in my opinion.
And more, yeah. In city hotels as well.
Yes.
Great. Puneet?
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for making it this early on in the morning, to listen to us. We were just chatting earlier. We thought there'll be only 5, 6 of us, but it's great to see the audience here. Anurag, the way we are looking at 2019, yes, globally everybody's saying, when are you going to be back on 2019? Frankly, the way we look at Accor, at least in India, just reaching 2019 is the first probably milestone. But frankly, I mean, we have few owners sitting here. If you look at the cost and the HLP cost, even the payroll cost, of course, we've restructured over the last 2 years. We've done a lot of cost optimization. But reaching 2019, we're already there. From a core point of view in March, and we were on a panel a couple of weeks ago at St. Regis with Hotelier India, and I said that we believe we will cross 2019 in March. We have across, from a portfolio point of view, 55 hotels across multiple geographies and multi-brands from the smart economy with 20 Ibises, Novotels, the Fairmont and the Raffles and the Sofitel here. So we already surpassed 2019 by a reasonable margin. And now we are looking for the rest of the year, how do we optimize, how do we maximize over 2019, how do we go 15, 20%? Because if you look at some of the costs, they have gone up by 15, 20% versus 2019. I mean, look at, the HLP cost, which is a major cost across the board for every hotel. So we are very bullish about India, and barring, of course, any other World War III, IV, or another wave, if this run continues, there's a strong demand for MICE, corporate travel, international travel. Again, the forward bookings are looking very positive, and a good indication for that is Bangalore. I was there a couple of days ago. The hotels are across the board are doing really, really well, which we know was the last market to recover. So across the board, we are seeing a strong, strong recovery. And I think the good news for all of us is we're seeing recovery in the rates. So the rates are coming pretty close to 2019. And from a core point of view, our endeavor is to how do we, keep moving forward from a rate point of view.
Well, that's great to note, and I think many business plans will change now because many budgets and business plans were made at the end of 2021, sure, where nobody saw this coming. Rohit?
Yeah, this is the third time in the last 2 years I've been answering this question, so I do that with a lot of trepidation, right? I remember after wave 2, predicting the world has come back and everything is going well. So this time it looks, the probability is much higher that we are in stable state. The numbers are already coming back. Some segments are slow, some are faster. I think the real question for all of us is how much potential this country has for travel and hospitality. And 2019 is, I'm afraid 2019 will become the wrong benchmark for us, right? Because we'll anchor ourselves so solidly on 2019 as if that's an end goal by itself. That's just a recovery outpost at best. I think this is a great point for us to debate at some point, may not be this forum, on how do we sort of, like somebody gave me a stat that Beijing has probably 80% of the total restaurants of India, right? I think those are aspirational goals that we can set at this point in time and totally de-anchor ourselves from 2019, because that will be setting a fairly low bar for ourselves. So, but let's see. First, let's get past that. I think we are close to that. All of us are close to that. We have heard this before. Leisure has come back. Luxury has done better. I think MICE and corporate, which is lagging, is also picking up quite fast. Those were the last two. A lot of it will also depend on consumer pockets and how much of their income is recovering. So that's a number I'll watch quite closely. Because at the mass level, that's what will drive a lot of travel consumption going.
Thank you, Rohit. Vipul?
Continuing in the vein of optimism, let me tell you that, while we can talk about recovery, growth, etc., the traffic on our platform, in terms of people looking, is above 30% above 2019 already. So if you look at from a consumer demand point of view, 2019 to what Rohit said is a wrong outpost. They will convert sooner than later. So therefore, I think the question, Anurag, should be, when can we touch a 20% growth over 2019? And that might itself be in this year, is what it looks like, just from pure consumer behavior.
You're sounding just like a board, so well done. Okay, that's heartening. So I think the one thing that's established is that all the business plans were just a piece of paper, and we need to relook, and everything should be the minimum new bar benchmark should be 20% over 2019. Okay, great. So what have been some of the permanent learnings? Because this question obviously, okay, one disclosure, none of the questions that I'm asking here is new or exclusive despite the best efforts made by Ms. Anjali Mehra and myself, but because all these questions have been asked before, but what have been some permanent learnings which you believe you will carry through despite that resurgence in demand, business coming back and 20% growth over 2019 numbers? Are there some permanent learnings? Maybe Vipul, you want to start
Yeah, so I
with
think, while there were some short-term changes in consumer behavior, I think there are some long-term things which are very clearly coming out. This whole thing about consumers really, I mean, if I just use a Hindi movie title, this whole thing about Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
Huh?
Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. People are just saying that, they are preferring experiences over goods, and that's a long-term change. People are saying, I have my bucket list, and some people say, I'll do it when I'm 50, and I'll do it when I'm 60, when I earn so much. COVID has taught us that we may never reach 50, unfortunately. And therefore, let me maximize the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next 9 months. Let me not plan for that 115-day vacation in December. Let me take, 5 2-day, 3-day breaks and start ticking off. Let me do that adventure travel which I've always wanted, but was postponing. So I think that immediate gratification and not waiting too long to build up the savings, things like that, there are things which are helping it, fintech opportunities. I don't need to save to travel. I can get a book now, pay later, anywhere. Everybody is willing to finance me. So I think the one long-standing change will be, we will see far more travel in the short term where people won't plan for that long vacation, etc. And just when they feel like. I think that's a permanent change. And from all of us, that has a lot of learnings, that how do we keep on creating that novelty in our providing so that this itch which is there, we can continue, and it's not just revenge travel. It is all about this being the new way of life where people want to go and experience new places, experience new things. And that will be a far-reaching and permanent change as far as COVID is concerned. I'm at least quite confident.
So novelty, experience,
yeah,
instant
immersive
gratification.
experiences, just, and even if it's 2 days, even if it is, 2 hours away, if there is something which I can experience which will lead to my enriching or will lead to my kids to get a new experience and all, I think that value to experience is a permanent change out of COVID.
Right. Rohit?
Yeah, so just a fun fact, we are the instant coffee of the travel world. Our 60% of our bookings get done on D-Day, right? Which is quite unusual for the industry. So we see this, this pattern, but Vipul is saying even more pronounced now. People are deciding very late. They are deciding like literally, kal kahin chalte hain, 2 din ke liye, right? So 7, 8 sessions in a year, short ones are becoming the norm. Also aided by the fact that work from home, school from home is working still as a format. I think the second big change, and I think it's not just COVID, it's just got accentuated during COVID, is whether the purchase is online or offline does not matter, right? Almost 95% of the influencing for that purchase is online today, right? And people are willing to trust complete strangers, absolutely complete strangers with 15 degrees of separation between them, if you were to draw a map, in advising them on travel choices, but less so their uncle and aunt, right? Which is very intriguing for me, right? That, and the desire to do what may seem like odd things, like for example, you get listicles like top 10 street vendors in Udaipur, and somebody decides to travel to Udaipur, seeing that listicle, which has nothing to do with either the flight or the hotel. And that consumption happens by the way because of that experience to be had, is a very, very strong trend. And people, and no judgment, people are living for the Instagram world. Like, it's not just happening here, I see that across the world.
Yeah. So Puneet, I think they spoke a lot about evolving consumer behavior, instant gratification and all that. So as traditional hospitality and hoteliers, now that happier days are coming back and we see a rebound, an explosive rebound, what are some of the learnings that we are able to incorporate which are going to stay? I mean, are we going to go back to the manning levels? Most hotels, they reduced their manning levels by 25-30%. There were some forced synergies that were brought in. There were ancillary revenue streams that came up. Are some of these lessons, I'm just giving a few examples, are going to be like permanent-ish in nature? Or are we going back to doing what we were doing earlier because the demand is there and we are doing 20% more than 2019?
No, I think, Anurag, I don't think we'll go back, for example, when it comes to manning levels. Because we have seen, because if you look at last 2 years, the volume levels were there. The rates were not there. But across the board, I mean, if you look at India did close to about 50% occupancy for last year. But I think some of the key lessons, as an industry we've learned, is we've always been kind of late adopters for technology, right? Like, for example, in restaurants, the QR code technology always existed, but none of us ever implemented it. So I think as an industry, probably we will really pay attention, and we may perhaps, in certain respect, be early adopters when it comes to technology. Moving forward, I think digital, whether it's Instagram or the consumer behaviors, a lot of the buying and the way we sell our hotels is going to move digital. So the traditional sales functions, as we have seen in the last 2 years, when your corporate business dies or there is no MICE business because of the restrictions, so you are totally reliant on the transient, and a lot of those sales were done online. So how do you capitalize and how do you, maximize that? So I think that trend will perhaps continue. And in the end, I think our business has always been about people, and it will remain. How you treat your people. I think there were a lot of learnings in the last 2 years. There were probably sometimes harsh decisions made or short-term decisions made. But I think moving ahead, if we were to, but again, to be fair, none of us had a playbook how to handle this when we were all hit with this pandemic in March 2020. But I think we are better prepared as an industry if we were to hit with something like this, how we move ahead with that.
Yeah. No, I think now we kind of have a playbook in the sense we know how to do more with less. So I think some of these lessons are going to be permanent. So, Prabhat, like once we start hitting the mid 70s or high 80s or early 80s occupancy levels again, you really believe in the luxury space and in the experiential space that we are in, we'll actually able to do more with less? Because we are also talking about consumer mindset. We have seen the change in the demographics of the customer. A lot more, early mid 20s and early 30s are consuming up luxury products today. So to serve them, instant gratification, kind of receding level of patience, immediate service, and all that consumer behavior, propensity to pay but expect the highest and the best as value for money. With all that also having come in, you have only 2 days to make the most of your life, so you need that, showering of love and attention. So how do you think is going to cope up with that?
So, Anurag, we always have seen over the centuries as Indian Hotel Company, the Black Swan events and COVID, it brings in a lot of positive. I mean, I'm going to take it as a positive learning. And the kind of shedding of extra weight, as we call it, on unnecessary requirements, we've kind of managed efficiency very well. In spite of all of those difficult 24 months, we still got recognized as the world's strongest brand. And that comes in a lot with the sincere care and the respect that we have for our guests. So moving forward, I guess the learnings that we've had has been of clustering our resources in cities and other areas where we have multiple portfolio. We've also embarked on the HR initiative of something called A1, which is multitasking of colleagues. All of this will help us to ensure the service levels don't get down while we still peak with the 70+ occupancies. The ADRs have been a good learning for us to say do not panic. The leisure has seen a great recovery, and I think we should all hold on and not dilute our, the ADRs or get into some kind of a bloodbath later. Delivering at 70% occupancy with the resurgence and the learning that we've had, I think we are in for doing that pretty well.
Great. So I think a related question. So as a general manager, like who has been through this cycle of an upside, reaching a peak in 2019, then falling flat, and then a V-shaped recovery, what would be a couple of messages that you have for a general manager? How would you expect the GMs, and there are quite a few in this room, to look at their business differently? What are the couple of pointers differently from what they were doing? We always took care of our people. Our GMs were always focused on social media, digital communications. These are core operations. What's the couple of things that you would want them to do differently?
We have a very interesting portfolio.
Just top two things, yeah.
Top two things would be very clear that, what we've been continuing to do as simple basics of hospitality, don't miss out on that.
Do it better.
Do it better. Guest remains as God and always will. The interest level would be to say in the learnings that we've had during the COVID, what are the services that is needed still to be given? What needs to be avoided, because that kind of guest doesn't require 5 people hovering around them anymore. And as Puneet mentioned, the digitalization has got accelerated. So are we able to help our colleagues skill themselves to be at the level where everything can be handled without getting in so much of a close proximity? But because of the portfolio mix that we have, from a palace hotel to a Vivanta, which is very functional, to an Ama, which is very experiential, there has to be a little bit different kind of a communication to each of our, vertical heads or the operations head.
So the top two?
Top two would be get into the acceptance of digitalization and ensure that services don't falter even if there is a seamless without touch kind of a requirement that comes by. And second is the efficiency index that you've had made. Make sure multitasking and reporting those EBIT numbers for stakeholders is not lost.
So Puneet, you, Prabhat, and many people in this room manage counterparties through a management contract hotels. If you see from an ownership standpoint, what would they expect different? What would they expect from a brand that they have a contracted with for a long-term 25, 30-year management agreement post-COVID? Now that business is coming, so what would you want to see from your property leadership different, or like for them to be able to serve your principal counterparty?
Sure. As you know, Anurag, we own 25 hotels as well. We are the only international operator which has heavily invested into India with a...
I mean, ownership is relatively easier in that side.
Yeah, so with our partnership with the, Interglobe Hotels, we have 20 ibises across India. So I think whether it's a management contract or own properties, in the end, everybody wants more EBITDA, right? It's all about GOP. It's all about driving that bottom line. And I think the message we are giving to our leadership in the hotels across the board, it's rate, right? We really need to be aggressive with the rates. The rates in India have been lagging for almost about 10 years. If you look at global key cities, the cost of construction, the cost of capital in India, which is probably one of the highest. So it's about time we become really aggressive with the rates. And by aggressive, I mean 20-25% to where we were in 2019. Because otherwise, I think for new investors, it just doesn't make sense, to invest into hotels, whether it's in economy, mid-scale, or luxury space. We were having some discussion over the last couple of days with hotel owners that why shouldn't I do a luxury residential apartment in Mumbai versus a luxury hotel? Because the returns are much higher doing a residential complex than a hotel. So if we as an industry really don't drive the rates, I think we will really hamper the development of the industry in India. And we have a long way to go. India today has 150,000 hotel rooms, same as Dubai. So I think it's the focus really needs to be on rates. And of course, I agree with Prabhat, the guest experience, and really putting the focus back on the service, which probably took a backseat, with all the cuts and during the pandemic and the changing mix in our hotels. So I think rates and guest experience for us would be, the top two.
Okay. Rohit, so, in your model of business, the kind of scale that you operate at, did you have to change and make many kind of tectonic shifts in your business model, your operations? These folks, they spoke about rates, they spoke about guest experience, they spoke about upskilling, I heard, in terms of training your associates, social, digital media. What about your business?
Yeah, so look, I think there are many changes. I think cost structure and technology are the most obvious ones because last 2 years was a crisis, but it was also a good opportunity to look at every cost structure of the company very closely and get that right. But from a fundamental level, I think there are two big changes. One is, I think the partner side technology has, I think, leapfrogged by 6 to 8x in 2 years from what it was 2 years back. So today, a partner can be sitting anywhere and running a hotel with absolutely complete minute-by-minute information on everything which is going, make choices. So that has been a dramatic change, and it was a good one because the partners have the ability now. So just to give you an example, one of our partners in Noida, as a software engineer, started one hotel 3 years back with us. Runs about 16 hotels today, right? Because he's able to use the technology to just open more inventory back to back. Right? And we are seeing that portfolio partners are becoming a very sizable chunk. So that's one thing. On the consumer side, I think it's gone through patches. I think there were a period when the consumers were really concerned about hygiene and what you're doing, which was wave 1, parts of wave 2. To now, I think it's a lot more about discovery, choices, and influencing them in terms of what is available. Because if I notice last 2 months, the pendulum has again shifted back to much more normal kind of, thing that the consumer is seeking, which is choices, price, value, inventory, distribution. We're back to the more normal stuff.
Right. Vipul?
I think one thing which is very clear, that, we all had heard this term VOCA, volatility and all. I think this is now becoming a part of our world. Today we are talking about COVID. Is there an oil crisis coming? With a digitally connected world, if there's anything which has led to a success of an organization till now, I think there is no guarantee it will lead to the success in the next 5 years. And therefore, the one learning, if I have to say, not even two, is agility and flexibility. Does it involve multi-skilling of people who cannot just do one job well? Because that one job might become irrelevant tomorrow for a short time. So can we just do multi-skilling? Can we ensure that we have flexibility in our systems using technology? Because today we can talk about our best learnings, but really none of us knows what is happening in June of this year. And if we then get the playbook, we might have the playbook for COVID, right? But can we make it into a larger playbook of saying that if there are VOCA elements which hate us, which are the playbooks which we hate? How can we then ensure that we are able to come back and bounce back in 10 days with a new playbook, rather than take 6 months like we did this time to get the new playbook? So I think agility and flexibility in our business models, in our customer handling, in our technology platforms, in our people, to me, that would be my single biggest learning and, sort of message for all of us as we move forward.
Right. So thanks. Prabhat, during the COVID period, the ancillary businesses during those periods became kind of a mainstream business. I know Taj has been very aggressive and kind of a thought leader in that sense. And you came up with AMA and Cumin and many such products which are now. Do you think they are here to stay?
I'll just correct her. IHCL has been affected, not that.
All right.
But yes, the ecosystem of IHCL is very strong, and the way the ancillary business or alternate revenue stream, that became kind of a mainstay for us during the difficult time. And that motivated colleagues. There was something to look forward to.
Was it commercially viable in the sense?
This is all incremental revenue, and you look at the cost structure, there's no extra cost, no investment that we did for whether it's the Cumin and Cumin ecosystem or AMA as an hub and spoke. It's all on management contracts. And we were able to create newer destinations, micro destinations. And with the campaigns that we did with 4D, driving experiences, great roads in India, Dekho Apna Desh, this just caught on with the fancy of people. It may not have moved the needle immensely, but what it did, it showed people that there is so much of new things to do in our own country. And I think we kind of got everybody excited. And the business still added 8 to 10% on the top line, which is remarkable when there's no cost structure to it. I mean, it's all profit margins from the very day beginning. It's like startups making money from the day one.
And the markets are accepting it, and they are really recognizing it, and one can see it from the upsurge in the stock prices.
So when we touched upon consumer insights and what has changed, the behavior to go in as extended family of wanting to have that many more holidays, Amas came up as a refreshing kind of an option. And we made it very simple, all-inclusive, one rate with the full bungalow, and with the trust, which is the most important aspect in our business. And with branded kind of, homestays, people will gravitate towards something that what-ifs are taken care of. And even for Cumin, work from home or doing conferences which was virtual, Cumin came in with the entire opportunity of doing in 30 cities together with 500 people a meal delivered. In fact, we've gone beyond with Cumin to say food can be delivered in 20 cities, in 100 of our hotels, even for international market. We have 9 international cities and geographies where you can download the Cumin app and provide food to your loved ones on some special days and celebrations. That's been learning and unbelievable kind of a sense of emotional connect for people.
Okay. So Puneet, there's a lot of business development happening, and we can see more signings. And we learned yesterday when there was an owner survey, conducted by Hotelivate, that the owners have obviously been through this cycle as well. So do you feel that there's a temporary mismatch in terms of signings and in terms of expected supply? Do you feel the pace having kind of slowed down a bit? especially on the luxury side or on the upper upscale side? Or what are your thoughts on the hotel openings, signings, new deals?
Sure. I think with what has happened in the last 2 years, there were a lot of investors sitting on the fence. But I think in the last couple of months, in the last 6 months, we are seeing a renewed demand, whether it's luxury, mid-scale, whether it's leisure, business hotels. So there is a renewed demand, and we're actually strengthening our development team, as we announced, a few weeks ago. Anirudh has just joined our team as head of development, and we are further strengthening our development team. And it's quite interesting, actually. We had a meeting with our owner of Verma on Mumbai, a 600-room property. So he wants to actually accelerate. Originally, we were looking at opening in 2025, but he's really, really keen and motivated to open it in 2024, or even earlier than that, if possible, right? So he actually really slowed it down, the project, over the last 12-odd months, but now he wants to put all the resources behind to really accelerate, because we genuinely believe next 5-6 years, there will be a bit of a mismatch between demand and supply in India. A lot of the supply has kind of slowed down for various reasons. There were restrictions as well, let's face it, right? I mean, you could not construct, the cost of raw materials, a lot of the, the business modeling has to be relooked at. But now I think the way it's moving, we are very optimistic across the board. We have 10 brands in India. We would like to introduce in luxury space, perhaps, Banyan Tree in lifestyle, 25 hours. So there's many, many brands we would like to bring to India. And I think next few years we'll be doing that. Last year we opened, of course, the Raffles in Udaipur, Novotel in Chandigarh, Ibis in Vikhroli. And this year again, we have 3 to 5 openings. A pipeline, we've got about 20-odd hotels already signed. And we are aggressively looking at to double that in the next couple of years. So I think we are again very optimistic, but it again goes back to what I said earlier. We as an industry have to really drive the rates to make it attractive for investors to get back into that space.
Right, thank you. And Rohit, I can see you half a smile, because when we talk of numbers of openings and the number of hotels and where you come from, the number of hotels that you announce and you open. And so how do you see this happening? This is one question. The second question is, your platform is primarily technology-led. Is there something that, and like we like to kind of consider ourselves as more traditional hospitality hoteliers, so to speak. Are there some learnings that you would want to incorporate in your ecosystem? And what are the things that we could learn from your technology strength and the advances that you have made?
Yeah. First of all, the models are so different. The numbers are just not comparable. It's not fair to compare. We open many small hotels very regularly. To open a 600-room hotel is a labor of love. It's very different, right? I think, just to give you a simple stat, 92% of the market in India is unorganized, which means that all brands put together, I'm taking a brand which is even 2 hotels, constitute 8% of the supply in the market today, right? And 92% is unorganized. Now, for that 92%, about 70-80% are people running or wanting to run hotels who are not, who you and I will not consider as traditional people from hospitality. They are coming from very different walks of life and see this as a legitimate opportunity to participate in the travel story of India, right? Now, at a very simple level, what do they want? And that's true of every SME in India. If you're a technology platform, if they can earn the same money or more money with same or lower effort, you have a winning combination going, right? Because the person is also probably running a steel business, also running 2 or 3 businesses, right? So for them, it's how easy can you make them and can you get them more money? Now that equation for us works, right? And that's why we find the supply continuously accelerating. And it also brings in new supply. Because what happens is, once they've tasted success with 2 or 3 hotels and they're generating the cash flow, they'll want to either go and lease a real estate or actually build one, because it's a short cycle building, right? It typically will take 9 to 12 months to construct a hotel of that nature. So I think there is a very, very large market. We play right there. To your second question, do we have things to learn? Oh, absolutely, right? I think I've been for example, from McKinsey days, I've been a lifelong Taj fan, right? I think there's a lot of cross-learning in terms of simplest of things. So not just from hospitality, we also learn from people like McDonald's, people like KFC, because we're fast QSR chains, right? How do you sort of get the right manpower? Even if we don't have them on our rolls, our partners have them. How do we enable them to serve them right? The cost structures, how to manage that. In terms of just the ethos of hospitality, combining that with technology, I think there's a lot to learn, and we have a long way to travel.
And we can learn how to adopt technology better.
I think, yes, look, in some sense, my belief is that every company in the world in the next 10 years is going to become a content and technology company, right? And other things will become sort of aids to get to that outcome. Now, it may sound completely bizarre, right? But you can mark my words and mark the date. Okay? This one I'm willing to lay a wager on, right? So in that sense, I think we are also 20% there, 30% there. We are not 80-90% there. We are discovering so much ourselves. For example, I think what we have seen in other categories, like for example, social commerce, right? The Meeshos of the world and what they've done to SMEs there. Not yet happened in travel to that extent. We have influencers and they post Instagram videos and get traffic, etc. But the innovation will come out of places we can't imagine today. Like 10 years back, 15 years back, Airbnb, if we had said that will be a huge success, would be very hard to imagine. I think the consumers are born digital. I think, look at our kids, right? It's just so natively born digital that they will have no other way of looking at life than through that screen. I think, let me give you a fascinating example. We spend so much time on saying billboards kahan lagaye, city mein, okay? I find this very fascinating. Stand on a street, observe people in a car, where that fancy billboard is there. Everybody's on their mobile. Nobody is looking out, right? So who's looking at that billboard? The billboard is the 6 inches in front of you. So fundamentally, content and technology, and it's very volatile. We are also discovering every day. I think we keep discussing. But yes, I think my only thing is that being curious and being committed to that process will benefit all of us.
So Vipul, I want your comments on what he just said. Plus, I have another question for you. You know, the last 2 years, all of us have kept our cash flows up because of weddings, because of staycations, because of pleasure. And now with the skies having opened, all flights back to normal, most countries accepting, you know, no barriers to travel anymore. Do you see a risk because of this attrition to outbound? So maybe if you want to lead with technology and then give us your perspective on outbound, on your data points.
Yeah, so two things. On technology, I totally agree with. Say there's a fundamental change. You yourself mentioned that the people in their 20s and all are spending much more on the hospitality. There's a one fundamental difference between all of us. For us, technology was a destination. We thought we are entering technology. For a lot of these people, they're digital natives as the word, for them, technology is not a word. That is their world, okay? And if I have to have a slightly sobering thought for everybody in this room, normally industries want to be ahead of the consumers on trends. I would take the opportunity to be provocative and saying as far as overall digital experience is concerned, today we are actually following the consumer. The consumer is ahead of us, and therefore, the aspiration of good hotels and all, today I would love, like airlines, to be able to go and select my room on the app. Or when I check in, I don't want to spend 10-15 minutes trying to check in. So I think we should be very clear that unless we actually are ahead of the customer, and that's a risk we have, even whether it is a search patterns, it is at the consumer. So it's all of us have to see, are we ahead? That's number one. Secondly, on outbound, this question comes to all of us, that now that outbound will open up, let's look at the numbers. At its peak, India used to, 21 million Indians used to go abroad. And if my math is slightly right, that's 1.5% of our population. So are we saying that 1.5% population is a risk to our domestic travel the way it's going? That's not going to happen. Yes, some people are going to go abroad, but there is this huge base. See, what is the biggest trend which is coming? We are getting searches from 1700 cities of India. See, technology, we keep on talking about other benefits. One of the biggest benefits of technology is it has democratized choices. You know, discoverability. I mean, the sort of cities we are getting luxury hotel searches. You know, people have the money, but more than money, they never knew these things existed. Today, they can just go on their app and find out, oh my God, there is something here good and that. So therefore, there are so many tailwinds overall that I think we'll be doing ourselves a disservice. You know, if I were to say that, you know, because of the risk of outbound, and I'll make a selling spiel here, please continue to be in this room. Because in 15 minutes from now, Rajesh will actually talk about this and say...
You're stealing his thunder, right?
Yeah, why outbound will be a great thing, but this story is going to continue. So if we see it as a risk, then we are putting the constraints on our eyes and wearing blinkers. The consumer is not telling us that.
Thank you. So I think we have 11 more minutes to go, and I want to kind of keep 10 minutes for some audience questions. So last question for all of you. I mean, we have seen sustainability become even more in focus in the last 2 years. Everyone is embracing the ESG and best practices. Is there something that you want to talk about very quickly, in a kind of a half a minute or so, or maybe starting with you, Prabhat?
You know, so I'll touch 2-3 points quickly. Yeah. One was the aspect of today's kind, when there's also a question of whether the resignation questions of the staff, whether they are interested in hospitality. I think sustainability, and from the Indian Hotel Company under the Tata brands, we've also embarked upon a social conscious approach called Pathya. We've clearly enumerated what are the stuff that we will be doing. Whether it is the question of getting the renewable energy 50%, whether we are talking about ensuring the EV charging stations are there in all our hotels, the entire effect of doing a green meeting, we've campaigned with Energize. So that is one factor that will keep the world of tomorrow interested in how to do it with a social responsible cause. The fact that we're opening new hotels, with nearly 20 hotels to be opened in this financial year. We've got about 50 AMAs to open, another 20 QSRs with Cumin. There's a growth that is happening, and everybody who is wanting to have a career with leaderships that they can achieve, that part of growth will also help ensuring that people stick on to this industry, as long as they know that they can grow. So I wanted to touch both, from a social conscious responsible tourism to the fact that you are in a growth trajectory will ensure that the momentum is kept alive.
Okay. Puneet?
No, I think, Anurag, ESG has always been important, but again, as what we're talking about being digital, it's going to be up in front, right? It has to be transparent. We have to put our money where our mouth is. So from a core point of view, we made a global promise. We will eliminate single-use plastic in guest-facing areas by end of this year, right? Across the board, across brands, from ultra-luxury, whether it's Raffle to Ibis, we're going to eliminate single-use plastic in any guest-facing area by end of this year. So that's a huge commitment we've made. We made another commitment of reducing our carbon footprint by 30% by 2030. Reducing food waste by 30% by 2025. So ESG is really, really important. And from a global point of view, we're taking it very seriously in Paris and, of course, in all our hubs around the world.
Sure. Anything?
Yeah, we're a young company. This agenda is coming together for us. I think there's a clear focus there. Also, it's the right thing to do. Also, the world around is demanding it in a very much more vociferous way, whether it's investors, consumers, suppliers, everyone, right? Actually, our households have always taught this as we use more recycled dabbas and we throw nothing, right? Everything gets reused in households. But on the corporate front, I think honest ESG is going to be the answer, because the world is clearly looking through cost-cutting measures being passed off as ESG. I think that won't sustain anymore. The world is smart now, and I think all of us will need to sort of look at the real core of it and do something about it. Yeah.
Vipul?
A very quick one. I think, when it comes to sustainability and all, if you look at it from a consumer point of view, I think where magic happens is when sustainable choices are also the right economic choices. If you look at CNG taxis, yes, it was sustainable, but they were also cheaper. If you look at EVs, so wherever I think we can do that magic, where your sustainable choices also lead to a consumer benefit of economy, that is where adoption will be very high. And I think that's what we are looking for. I think that would be my thing. That would
So
be the
sustainable choices also are smart choices.
Yes.
So we have some questions from the audience. While hotels have optimized manpower costs, what about standards? We would be ignorant if we believe the standards have not been affected or compromised. So you opened a Raffles in the midst of all of this. Well, we are aware because we opened 3 hotels in the midst of pandemic as well. What's your take on this, Puneet?
No, I agree. I think if we look at it, service standards...
Did you maintain the same usual high standards that you
No,
would have?
absolutely. For Raffles, there was no compromise. And again, we wanted to position Raffles where...
And the other brands?
Across the board. I think, but I just want to make comment. I actually agree with this comment. Across the board, yes, the service standards have taken a bit of a backseat because everybody was so focused on...
Is it true, and this is the kind of the elephant in the room, that since our demographics were 85 to 90% or maybe even more domestic and Indian, service standards to some extent took a bit of a beating?
Let me answer that,
How about you?
Anurag. I mean, imagine, we always say that the Indian consumer is more discerning and demanding. True. I'm using the word. To sustain a similar NPS scores for the year, what we did in 2019 for across our portfolio, says a lot in terms of what the colleagues have been able to do, multitasking and ensuring the services don't fall. So it is an important aspect, but I guess we've learned our lessons.
Right. This next question, in Thailand, hotels say lower staff during C19, but we'll rehire, but not back to pre-19. I think we spoke about it earlier a bit.
Sure, I think you have...
Yeah. I mean, I think you were talking about earlier, Vipul, the challenges that you are facing in hiring associates, right? And maybe you want to talk about it a bit?
Yeah, true. And I think while most of the people here will be talking about hiring in the hospitality sector, for us, the additional challenge is that our people in engineering, product, all actually are not hospitality people. And with all the startup, etc. So I think there is a challenge there. And one of the pleasant things we have realized is that while there is a challenge, a lot of people are actually expressing and actually joining us back. So I think, looking at the talent pool of people who have left because of any circumstances, actually want to come back to organization, and that is an opportunity all of us should go after actively.
Very quickly, one-line answers. What do you see as the biggest risk to your organization? One line.
If I'm not able to help the talent grow.
Talent, got it. You.
I would say talent as well.
Talent.
Talent, yeah.
Not recognizing consumer trends early enough.
Sorry?
Not
Trends.
recognizing consumer trends early enough.
Consumer trends.
Yeah.
Planning for a problem which I don't know is which one.
VOCA you mentioned earlier. Okay, what's the plan after recovery? I think we addressed that. 20% over 2019. That's the new benchmark, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody's smilingly taking notes. Fantastic. How do we retain the Generation Z in today's hotel industry? What do we do to retain, motivate, and plan their career? I think Vipul, you spoke about it. 40% of the people, after accepting offers, don't join. After you giving a 40% salary increase, right? So, anything, Prabhat, that you
what we've done very efficiently is that we've redeployed people in other Tata companies. We've in fact sent professionals who are very good with their work to Dubai hotel, which we recently opened in London. So there's a lot of cross-exposure that's happening, and we are skilling people. So deserving candidates are in association and collaboration with hospitality schools globally, with ESSEC, and we've worked...
Rank and file salaries in our business, typically compared to any other graduate who graduates from a different country, are typically lower. Is there something being done, to address that? So that's a common feedback that we get.
Sure. I think we have to be, again, a little bit innovative how we approach this, again, the learnings from the pandemic. So we opened Ibis Vikhroli in December. So we've taken a completely different approach, looking at critical roles and critical functions. So for example, typically most hotels have a front office team and F&B team. So we've completely gotten rid of that. There's a guest experience team who are multitask, multi-skilled to do both the functions. So depending where the need is, they can pitch in where they're required. So I think for the Gen Z, that's very attractive. Because a typical part, first you do a few years in front office, then in F&B, and then other departments. So that's accelerated. And it goes back to that instant gratification point. They want it now.
So different pay scales for people who matter most.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We spoke about reset in cost. There's a question. Despite recovery, hotels continue to cut cost in the name of COVID, newspapers in rooms, only QR code menus, fewer in-room amenities. Is this right?
No, but I think again, newspaper in rooms, how many people really read newspapers, right? It's all on your device. I mean, why would you want to
No, some people like to have the newspaper in front of
Fine,
them.
it's available on request, but
Yeah.
why would you want to send it to every room and force the guests to use it
And as long
when
as
they're not
your-
using it?
As your personal device, you can throw it on the television
Yeah.
screen. That's what
I think a
you
great question. While tech has taken center stage, are we missing the cornerstone of hospitality with high contact and with human touch points? Are we at the risk? Yes.
I think this debate is sort of infructuous, right? Because technology is not meant to serve something you don't want to get served with, right? The consumer is expressing a choice, and technology should be a more delightful and a improved version of serving the same to you, right? I'll sometimes ask a question saying, why is there so much obsession about room sizes, right, of a hotel? Like maybe the consumer is looking for a zazz to play and a drink to be had much more than the size of the room, and that or a technology interface which is much superior. So it is not it's a false choice when we say that it's either technology or a human being. And I think benevolent technology is the need for the day, which serves the consumer, the employees. Even our employees want better technology. They are frustrated with poor technology, right? At times.
Okay, one quick roundup, last one. We have like a few, just under a minute to go. How did COVID and this whole experience of last 2 years change you personally? Professionally, you adapted, you survived, you thrived. But how did it change you personally? Vipul, you want to take that?
I think, and it would stand for most of the leaders here. I think my one thing would be chin up and optimism. The teams
So
are
optimism.
chin up, confidence. That's what the teams want from you.
More optimistic than you were before. This too shall pass. Okay.
This is a question for me personally.
Yes, personally. This is personally.
Okay. I think I rediscovered my balance in life between family and work.
Okay.
Right? I think it was not in the right balance, and just being home and being more alive to what every family member expects of you. Something I have not experienced for the last 20 years, right? That intensity. I think that's been the most fundamental change.
Okay, quickly, Puneet, time is almost
Yeah,
up.
I mean, similar sentiment, better work-life balance. That's what I would say.
Prabhat, same
I
for
have
you?
one word, strategility.
What?
Strategility. Strategy and agility and become an all-rounder because life will give
So
you...
this is
survive.
something that you adopted only during COVID?
Yeah,
Becoming strategic and agile.
And being all-rounder.
Thank you, guys. I think time's up. Thank you for a lovely...
Thank you.